Hey, it's Jordan with the Young Turks, TYT Politics. It is Wednesday, June 14th. Obviously, the shooting at a congressional baseball practice has been the big story today. Emma Vigeland did a video a little bit early updating you on what exactly happened. I have been reporting on that, on some other things. I will be going to North Carolina tomorrow, as there is another water contamination story in Cape Fear, where there is chemicals in the water now. And like Flint, like East Chicago, nobody seems to know what's going on. Check my Facebook page for information on that story. I'll be going there tomorrow to North Carolina for another water contamination story. I think it's a problem when there are shootings, when everybody and their mother say, now's not the time to politicize. Now's not the time to comment. Now's not the time we need to have thoughts and prayers. No, it's the opposite. This is the time to be political. This is the time to publicize it, because it is political decisions allowing this mass carnage in our country to continue to happen. And it is the people who are saying and criticizing people like me, criticizing people like Sean King. It is those people saying, oh, how dare you politicize in this time of tragedy, that are allowing the tragedies to happen. And by the way, they're not tragedies. Tragedies are implying that there's something, we just couldn't do anything. We can do something. We can do something about these events. It's just that we don't have the political will to do it. So I'm going to get into my thoughts later. If you don't know, a gunman opened fire this morning. He shot, I believe, at least 5 people were injured. One of them is Congressman Steve Scalise. He was in stable condition, but he's now in critical condition last I checked. Despite politics, I don't agree with the man, but clearly, I don't wish any harm on him. I hope he makes a full recovery. I'm sure you do too. But it was only a matter of time. It's typically extremist conservatives that distort and discredit and, frankly, shamefully try to distract us from the gun violence and the fact that a man with multiple criminal infractions, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute, can just legally go buy handguns, go buy a rifle, go buy whatever he wants. Who cares? Who cares if you've been... Let me tell you here. Who cares if you in March, Hodgkinson met with sheriff deputies in Illinois after they received calls that he fired 50 shots on his property. Hodgkinson had a valid firearms owner identification card, and authorities determined that no laws was violated. Yeah, so he just fires 50 shots. Keep your guns. Keep your guns. In 2006, he had an incident in 2006 involving an alleged domestic battery and unlawful discharge of a shotgun. The case was dismissed. No problem. No problem. Keep your guns, right? So this gentleman happened to have volunteered for Bernie Sanders. So if any of you volunteered for Bernie Sanders, who have ever volunteered for a political campaign, that could mean as much as literally being a top volunteer around the country, organizing events, organizing other volunteers, or it could mean you literally went to one event, signed your name on a piece of paper that you were going to do something, and you were counted as a volunteer. So it's not clear to me. I haven't read anything about what exactly this person did as a volunteer for Bernie Sanders. Obviously, Bernie Sanders came out and vehemently denounced this act of violence on the floor.
Madam President, I have just been informed that the alleged shooter at the Republican baseball practice this morning is someone who apparently volunteered on my presidential campaign. I am sickened by this despicable act, and let me be as clear as I can be. Violence of any kind is unacceptable in our society, and I condemn this action in the strongest possible terms. Real change can only come about through nonviolent action, and anything else runs counter to our most deeply held American values. I know I speak for the entire country in saying that my hopes and prayers are that Representative Scalise, congressional staff, and the Capitol police officers who were wounded make a quick and full recovery. I also want to thank the Capitol Police for their heroic actions to prevent further harm. Thank you, Madam President.
So this gentleman apparently volunteered for the Sanders campaign. Social media accounts showed that he was vehemently against Donald Trump and anti-Trump and was for Donald Trump's impeachment, like millions of other people around this country. But he did not work for Bernie Sanders' campaign. He does not work for Bernie Sanders' Senate office. He has no formal or legal or financial connection to Bernie Sanders. So, of course, Joy Reid blames Bernie Sanders for a mass shooting. Of course. And, you know, believe it or not, I have fun getting into it sometimes with Twitter people. But I don't like doing videos ranting against corporate media stooges because it takes time away from me focusing on real stories like people being poisoned or on water contamination and police brutality and financial corruption and the whole nine. But can't let these people get away with it, because when Joy Reid slimes and smears Bernie Sanders for something that is not his fault, has no connection whatsoever to Bernie Sanders, her corporate colleagues aren't going to call her out. So it's up to us to call her out, because she's a liar, she's being deceptive, and she's a fraud. So let me read you the tweet, which my colleague Sean King has called her out on. I have called her out on. Many people have called her out on. So somebody tweeted, too soon to mention Bernie owes his entire political career to the NRA, particularly his support of assault rifles his R opponent decried. So that was somebody else who tweeted that, and Joy Reid responded to that person at 12:05 p.m. in the afternoon. So, this was still active, going on. I hope we have the maturity as a country to confront facts like this. At the same time, we're thinking of the victims and keeping level heads. So what you just did there was subtly imply that somehow Bernie Sanders' previous record on guns, his policies, somehow are connected, or insinuated that Bernie Sanders somehow, things that he did or policies he put in place or policies he called for or things he chose not to do somehow are connected to this shooting or this person who volunteered for Bernie Sanders. Well, first of all, she's full of shit. Bernie Sanders has a lifetime D- record with the NRA. Bernie Sanders in 1994 voted for an assault weapons ban. What she's referring to is something he did, I believe, when he was running for mayor originally in Vermont, which is a very, very, it's a pro-gun state. There's a lot of hunting that goes on there. There's also a very low percentage rate of gun violence. So let me read you from ontheissues.org. Though Sanders has largely been on the left to the main Democratic opponent, Hillary Clinton, he is to the right of her in one notable way, as evidenced by his voting record, gun control. MSNBC notes that, quote, it's important to realize that Vermont has some of the most lax gun laws in the nation, in large part because gun violence in the Green Mountain State is so low, and that Sanders' gun vote puts him, quote, in line with his home state's political norm. On guns, he has a mixed approach. He didn't go for a federal handgun waiting period. He wanted some protection for gun manufacturers, but he was for an assault weapons ban. And what he was saying when he was on the campaign trail, when he was against holding all gun store owners responsible, is if I go into a gun store and buy a gun legally and I pass a background check and the gun store owner does everything right, checks me, and I pass based on the background checks that are in this country, should the gun store owner be held responsible for somebody who legally purchased a gun but was deranged? Somebody could legally purchase alcohol and get drunk and start shooting people. Should we blame the person at 7-Eleven who sold him the alcohol and checked the ID? No, of course you wouldn't blame the store owner. It's the person who fired off the shots. It's not so different. Why would you blame a gun store owner, for selling a legal gun and checking somebody's status on buying it? So what Joy Reid did is, in a chaotic situation where a congressman got shot, some of his aides got shot, he's in critical condition, subtly, and it's real subtle if you read the tweet, quote, "I hope we have the maturity as a country to confront facts like this at the time we're thinking of the victims and keeping level heads." The fact she's reciting is this person saying, too soon to mention Bernie owes his entire political career to the NRA, particularly his assault of assault rifles his Republican opponent decried. Again, D- with the NRA, voted for assault weapons ban, probably came out stronger than a lot of corporate Democrats after Newtown and after other gun violence. His campaign policies were a lot stronger in criminal justice reform, which Joy Reid supposedly cares about, a lot more strong than Hillary Clinton's. Bernie Sanders has supported things that would decrease environmental dangers, violence against African Americans, violence against LGBT people, violence against transgender people. But in a time of chaos and a time of vitriol, if you go on Twitter after one of these shootings, Joy Reid, an MSNBC host, chose to try and basically subtly link the shooter and what happened to Bernie Sanders' voting record. It's disgusting, it's a lie, and it's shameful. And she has a national platform. She has a weekend show on MSNBC. She goes on Meet the Press on NBC. I believe she writes columns for outlets. And she does this. So let me ask you a question. So Bernie Sanders was a little more lenient on gun control in Vermont, which is a very big hunting state. So if a few people die skiing in Colorado, should you go in there as a politician and try to limit skiing? Of course not. And Joy Reid is purposely distorting the record. She is purposely trying to equate Bernie Sanders with this shooting, and she has a microphone. So, as we know, all these shootings, and I don't give a fuck if I come off politically incorrect, all these shootings, it's the same exact formula. There's a mass shooting, the media puts on the politicians, they do a play-by-play, everybody says thoughts and prayers, everybody says now's not the time to politicize, everybody says, oh, well, the shooter, was deranged, this and that. Not really any comment on gun control, the numbers, how these things happen every other week. It's just the same exact playbook. And the extreme right goes online, and they try and pretty much deceive and distort the true causes of this. And now you have neoliberal, frankly, I wouldn't even call him centrist, I would call Joy Reid conservative, basically trying to lie about the most progressive politician in the United States, the most popular politician in the United States. So it's not just the Tea Party lunatics anymore you got to worry about. It's the centrists, the progressives, the liberals smearing Bernie Sanders. Well, let me tell you something. And you know me, I cover Bernie Sanders a lot. When he's wrong, I say he's wrong. When I don't agree with his strategy, I say it. My new book is out. If you want to check that out, I have a Patreon. It's on my Facebook page. I criticize Bernie Sanders a little bit in the book. Not personally, but his strategies. But this is dangerous. And remove Bernie Sanders from it. I wouldn't do this about Hillary Clinton. I wouldn't, after this, if it was a Hillary Clinton volunteer, blame Hillary Clinton for a shooting. It's absurd. And it's blatant partisanship. It's blatant politics. So I said in response to Joy Reid, who said, I hope we have the maturity as a country to confront these facts. A, she's not citing any facts, because again, Bernie Sanders has been tough on guns. I said on Twitter, how about we confront the fact that Barack Obama, after 20 school children were shot up and killed in a Connecticut school, basically did nothing. He went in front of a camera, he cried, put up his hands and said, oh, well, Congress is Republican, there's not much I could do. And then did nothing for years. Did nothing for years. Then he tried to put in some executive actions on background checks, but he did nothing. Did he use the billy pulpit to go around the country and go district by district by district and use his, whether I like to criticize him or not, the guy had a marvelous record and an amazing skill using his voice and inspiring people. He could have went to Mitch McConnell's district and criticized him and cited the violence where Mitch McConnell is representing, or Paul Ryan, or any of these deranged Republicans who allow mass gun violence to be perpetrated on the citizens they're supposed to represent. Barack Obama could have done that. Republicans in Congress weren't stopping him, but he didn't. When is the tipping point? If it's not when 20 school children, elementary school children, are shot up, when is the tipping point? And it's not all Barack Obama's fault. I don't want to cite Barack Obama. George W. Bush didn't do a damn thing. None of these people did a damn thing. But as Bernie Sanders showed you on the campaign, you can't do a damn thing if you're not willing to fight for what is right. And Barack Obama did not fight for what is right because he had neoliberal establishment shills around him telling him, well, it can't be done. So how about we confront that fact, Joy Reid? And this is a journalist. She's a journalist basically saying that linking Bernie Sanders to this shooting when Bernie Sanders has one of the worst records among the NRA, when Bernie Sanders voted for the assault weapons ban. After every one of these mass shootings, Bernie Sanders has come out calling for tighter gun control. In his state of Vermont, which he represents, which has a very low gun violence effect or number, he wasn't as strong. But, you know, it would require context and nuance to report that, right? And the corporate media allowed and pushed this smearing of Bernie Sanders' gun record throughout the campaign. And frankly, I don't think Bernie's answer was too great. I think he could have been stronger. He should have said exactly what I'm saying. And I'm no terrific orator. So the reason this is important is not to go viral. It's not to get in a Twitter fight with Joy Reid. The fact of the matter is, nothing's going to change if we don't only have lunatic conservatives on the right trying to deflect and distract from the real causes of gun violence, but we now have neoliberal centrists distracting and distorting the true causes of the gun violence, the true record. And that's what Joy Reid did on Twitter today. And I don't care what her defenders have to say. I don't care what she has to say. She calls me a Power Ranger. I think she called Nomiki a turtle dove. I mean, and if she saw this, she'd say, oh, what a racist, what a misogynist, what a sexist. That's all of their responses. That's all of their responses. Well, you know what? If covering water contamination and lead poisoning of minority communities in Flint and East Chicago, I'm going down to North Carolina tomorrow, if that makes me a racist, then I don't know what racism is, and you don't either. But all this gun violence isn't going to end, folks. I'm just keeping it real. It's not going to end because there's no political will for it to end. Until you get an actual progressive who represents people in the White House, in Congress. These people don't care about human life because they back every war. And you know what? When it is an Arab or a Muslim, which Sean King pointed out on Twitter today, that shoot up any place in New York City, we got to go to war. We got to go to war. We got to ban whole religions. But when a deranged white person does it, well, thoughts and prayers. Our thoughts and prayers. Let's not politicize it. Yes, I am going to Wilmington to cover Gen X tomorrow. I announced that in the beginning. So I don't want to hear about don't politicize things. I don't want to hear about now's the time for thoughts and prayers. As I said, I and I hope you wish for a recovery for Steve Scalise. We don't wish him harm. But I also want to point out something Paul Ryan said, which I think is absolutely laughable. It's absolutely laughable. And the corporate media won't call him out on it, so I'll call him out on it. So Paul Ryan says, an attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. That, my folks, is white privilege, and it's bullshit. Because you know who Paul Ryan attacks on a daily basis? The poor, the working class, minorities, and people who cannot defend themselves and don't have lobbyists. Paul Ryan and policies he's pushing to rip people off Medicaid, to take away food stamps, to take away Medicaid from poor and sick and starving sick people and old people is going to kill people. So maybe it's not a mass shooting, but things that he does every single day and his extremist buddies do every single day, and corporate Democrats, many of which subtly push these same things, are doing the same thing, just not with a gun, with a pen, signing these bills into law. Corporate media won't tell you that. A little too nuanced. It's actually taking on the powerful. Morning Joe will have Paul Ryan on, make him out to be this great champion of liberty and justice for all. Paul Ryan is just as big a murderer as mass shooters. He just does it more slowly and with more fanfare. And I don't really care if you don't like me saying that, because it's true. Donald Trump, as Jimmy Dore always says, as I say, Donald Trump, awful person, awful president. He needs to be taken to task. He needs to be covered. But let's not act like the United States of America was some paradise January 19th, before he became president. Because we had these problems January 19th. They've gotten worse, but it's not like we were a democracy before Trump. It's not like sick individuals or people with criminal records, it wasn't easy for them to get guns. And don't listen to the trolls on Twitter. Don't listen to the trolls on Facebook pushing out this bullshit about it's not guns, we need more guns. Yeah, it would have been good if every congressman had a gun there. We could have had a wild, wild west shootout and more people would be more dead. That's it for now, folks. Go to my Facebook page where I just announced I'm headed to North Carolina tomorrow to cover another water contamination story. I feel like this is pretty much all I'm covering, but unfortunately, the water contamination isn't just about water, because it's most of the time corruption that causes the water contamination. So I'll be down in North Carolina tomorrow with Ty, and I'm trying to report also on Flint, which has news. So thank you for watching. Share this video, TYT Politics on YouTube. Have a good day. Be safe.